we're going to do button versus cutoff drilling, and we're going to get basically just like straight into hands. We're going to reference models when I think it's necessary to reference models. Outside of that, we're just going to move. So let's go. What do you guys want to do on the flop here? We're the cutoff. We open 50 big blinds, button flatted. Yeah, I'm going to be checking as well. Just gonna start with a check here. There's a little bit of bet, which is kind of cool, I suppose. What do you guys think the overall c-bet frequency was? Yeah, my guess is around 25%. That would be my guess. Probably big. Okay, so it's 20%. So Schwibs, good job, brother. And so I said 25, you said 20, you win. And I said big. Big is the correct answer. There's no small betting. Okay. And so like so when you're thinking about this strategically, okay. First of all, from a macro perspective, checking about 75% of the time is a good idea. So I just went with the macro answer. So checking for the most part is what you want to do. You don't do so much betting in scenarios like this one. They did change the layout of GTO Wizard, and I'm just gonna get used to this new thing that they do to try to make me look silly. And they try to make this look all pretty and cute. I don't know, maybe it is pretty and cute. Right now I hate it, but it's because it's new. So cutoff versus button, I said 75% check, it's 78% check, which is fine. Sorry, rather 72% check and I can't think. 72% check, 28% bet. I was thinking 28% bet when I said 78. 72% check, 28% bet. And that's pretty close to 75-25, right? This is at 50 bigs. Yeah, so that's the first part. So when I was thinking about the check percentage, 75%, right? I was like ballparking what I thought the macro strat looked like. It turns out it's 72% check, 28% bet. Then from there, when I deduced that I wanted to bet big, bet big stemmed from the fact that on this type of a board, it's pretty comfortable to check King X, which is my second pair. It doesn't need any protection or anything like that, which means my betting range is going to be very dense top pair. And if my betting range is going to be very dense top pair with no second pair betting, really, then I can just bet large. And so that's where that bet large strategy came from. Okay, it doesn't come from memorizing solver outputs. That's kind of the main point. I think if you're trying to memorize solver outputs, there's too many spots. There's too many spots to memorize. So I don't think that works. Okay, we checked the flop. We got a jack turn. What do you guys want to do now? Okay. I think we're still betting fairly large in terms of sizing. All right. I think we're still betting fairly large in terms of sizing. As a result of kind of keeping the sizing choice on the larger side, I do tend to check this. I do think this hand actually makes the bet, but I don't think it bets very much. And I would check. I also think you're going to be surprised. I think if we look at how high up we double check, I think that a lot of people will be surprised at how strong the check twice range is. So I'm talking about hands like ace 10 or ace queen, although I bet those hands a lot. I think, and to be honest, I might even bet those hands pure myself. But I do think that you're likely to see some hands like that check. Maybe you're more likely to see hands like king jack check. I think you're more likely to see hands like ace jack bet and hands like king jack check. I think unblocking top pair for the check raise can be quite nice. But I'm curious to see exactly how this plays out. This is an interesting spot here. So there's some betting. Interestingly, there's some bet small, which is cool. Okay, so this is kind of what I was referring to when I said like how high up we would see check twice. So there's ace 10 with a 50% check. I think a lot of people just pure bet here, right? Like you check the flop, and the guy checks back, and like most people are just go green light. Like let's start ramming in money. And I do think that this is a type of scenario where, especially with the jack coming in, I think that this is the type of scenario where you're likely to see a lot of this type of checking happen. So if you get a spot that kind of looks like this, I think it works this way quite often. So ace 10 here. I see some ace queen checking, not that much, but a little bit. About looks like 14 to 23%. Some ace king variations checking there. Looks like it wants to bet the spade, and has a pretty solid check on the non-spade variations. Pocket aces is checking, pocket kings is checking. I would have checked. So I would have bet king jack too much. Looks like. Looks like I would have mixed this up. Would have gotten this backwards. The poker's hard, man. So part of the thesis for checking king jack would have been like 2-bet, like check raise, unblocking top pair value bets, and blocking the ways that the in-position player could catch the turn. But that was wrong. So it doesn't really matter what I think. Jacks is checking. Where's threes? Threes was gone because we bet the flop with it. Ace 3 is betting. Oh no, did I say this? No, I said this. What I'm trying to think about how I thought about this. I said checking king jack to check raise it, right? or is it, fuck. Yeah, it's checking king jack to check raise it, and then it's betting. I did say that. Okay, good. I did get this right. Okay, I guess good. So checking king jack to check raise it, and then we bet. This is actually very common. Like you actually end up, if you run through like a number of different two-pair situations on ace-high flops at least, you typically see. Actually, it's not even ace-high flops. Usually, it's when you usually bet the top pair two-pair. In my experience, you usually bet the top pair two-pair, which is like a little bit counterintuitive because I think a lot of people like they want to check the top pair two pair because of that blocker. But I think what ends up happening is check raising that version of two pair actually really sucks. So you see a lot of this like betting like ace three here. Like ace king's a pretty heavy bet. Ace jack's a pretty heavy bet, and then we're checking more king jack. Like this is quite common. At least that's I'm pretty sure that I'm thinking about this properly. This is like a quite common variation or strategy for breaking down how your two pair works. And so if you bet the top two pair, you'll see that like if we bet here, I don't know, what is this? 83%. Looks like we're pretty noisy in terms of bet sizing. Yeah, we're pretty noisy over here in terms of bet sizing as well. So we bet like half pot or something, which I don't know if that's great, but you can see like your opponent has this ace X block still, but like you can contrast the offsuit ace X block with the offsuit king X block. Like there's quite a lot of these offsuit kings here. And these won't bet if you check, right? So like monetizing this when you have an ace blocked can be somewhat nice. It's even more pronounced, I think, when there's not an ace on the flop, because because ace is such a significant part of the preflop range. And then let's go here, and then we check, and then this guy bets. Yeah, we can't check raise because this is a polar bet sizing strategy, so this is just overbetting, so which is cool. But now, like, nonetheless, like, where do these overbets come from, right? I mean, like, they come from ace X. I mean, that's where a lot of these overbets come from. They come from ace X. Obviously, they're going to come from queen 10 as well. But we see this overbet, and then we'd probably rather catch this with like king jack than like some ace X variation, I think. And that's because we want, when your opponent does overbet, you don't want him to have queen 10, right? You want him to have, ace 10. All right, if he's going to have a value bet. Okay, let's keep going. That's pretty annoying. You guys are up. What do you guys want to do? There's only really two viable answers, right? It's like check or bet 1.5. And I think I would just check. It's an annoying river. Killed my kicker. Having a queen in your hand is probably not great when it comes to betting 1.5 anyways. So, although, yeah, I don't think it matters. I guess we just check. Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, check or bet 1.5, those are your only two viable answers. Bet 1.5 is pretty viable. It's more competitive than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be, like, driven out. But yeah, you can see this, like, bet 1.5 is, like, a pretty reasonable strategic answer with king X. I mean, it's fine. You have, some shitty pair, and you can bet small with it, try to get some value. Mostly checking. Okay, that's not, like, working counterintuitively to how I thought it would work or anything, so that's fine. Okay, so what do you guys want to do? Look at you guys. You guys all bet against me. On the last one, I said we could maybe block, and you said blocks intuitive but doesn't generate any value. I don't think our hand's strong enough to bet small. Still worked. I just checked this hand though. Oh shit, we got quite a bit of bet there, right? So yeah, and I'm expecting this like 70, maybe slightly more than 75% check. Yeah. So this one's 80% checking. I don't know. This hand didn't seem like it was fucking great or anything. But to the credit of this, like it's the type of hand where, like when you look at these hands in here, these are all the types of hands where you don't want to check call and check folding sucks, right? So like that type of those characteristics, when you have those characteristics, not always, but they frequently make up the way that you should bet, right? Like you have a hand that's clearly not strong enough to check call, and clearly too strong to be like, oh, I'll just check fold, I don't care. Like that kind of sensation that you get when it's like that kind of sucks. Like that's where the betting range often comes from. You can see that all these types of hands, they're all the backdoor flush draw variations for the most part, right? These backdoor flush draws where, like, do you want to check call Jack 10 of hearts on this board? Like, probably not. But check folding Jack 10 of hearts also sucks. And so, like, those hands bet, whereas, like, if you have, I don't know, like 10 9 of clubs, you can just check fold that. It's just trash, right? So that's kind of how this works. Or at least that's a good way to think about it that I find helpful. But yeah, this hand mixes. That's cool. This board doesn't have that much betting. You guys are up. All right, so what we're gonna do here really quickly is this is our opening range, we're just gonna go backwards. So this is our opening range, okay? So it's linear, it's 37%, which is 37.5, which is like pretty standard for a cutoff open. Offsuit nines, suited sixes. The reason we're consulting this is that you guys get a good frame of reference for like what it's helpful to block when we get called here. So ace queen offsuit's a pretty important ace in the in position range. Obviously there's going to be more ace queen that bets than like, I don't know, ace nine. But as a base rate, like this you start off with a pretty high amount of ace queen in the button flat, right? So having a queen can be like kind of helpful. Having a 10 can be like pretty helpful, I think, as far as blockers. So like, you know, betting like maybe a queen 10 or something, because I think you're gonna have to bluff here with some bullshit hands, right? I don't think it's gonna work. Like you're not gonna have enough 4x and 5x to just bluff with good hands. So I think like hands like queen 10, jack 10, 10 9 maybe, queen 9. Those hands make pretty good bluffs. Queen 7, I don't know. Maybe this is like not the greatest. Maybe it's not that bad. I'm not sure. I'd probably check. I don't feel like I should be bluffing here too much, and this hand's like not that great, so I would check fold it. But I'm not mind blown by this. Like I'm not mind blown by this. I want to go in. I would bluff with more like queen 9, like I said, which is a better queen X hand. But like I would bluff with more of this. So there's quite a lot of that in there. Jack 9, 10 9, Jack 10. Queen 9, Jack 9, 10 9, these are all pretty heavily used combos over here. And you can see that these combos are actually more heavily used than these combos, okay? And I think for a lot of people, that's not very intuitive because these hands are worse, right? And so like, you know, when you don't know, maybe if you're new to studying, when you don't know what to do, you typically start off with bluffing from the bottom up. And of course you could say, well, that's not queen 4 and queen 5. And I would say, of course, but these hands have gut shots. They're actually different hands in general. So these hands are a different hand class. So if we're just looking at like naked queen high hands, we would actually start at queen 6, okay? And if we're gonna start at queen 6, and then we're gonna use the strategy that we're gonna bluff from the bottom up, that turns out to be much worse than just bluffing with queen 9, okay? So on a board that's paired especially, it can become pretty easy to think about where the strongest hands in your opponent's range are going to come from, right? And so that's what I was doing, right? So what I was trying to do in this situation was I was trying to think about where are the strongest hands in my opponent's range going to come from? Well, where are the offsuit ace X hands going to come from? They're going to come from ace 9, ace 10, ace jack, and ace queen. Okay, well then blocking those becomes pretty helpful, right? To getting folds and to making sure that when I bet and actually do get called that I'm not dead, right? If I bet and I do get called, I would rather run into pocket sixes than run into ace 9, right? So when you look at this and you isolate the queen 6 through queen jack region and you say, let's bluff from the bottom up, that turns out to be pretty shitty compared to, let's think about where trips is coming from, and then let's bluff from there, okay? So hopefully that was like, because at least my strategy was a little bit more effective than probably one of the more common strategies that people deployed to come up with how they want to bluff, right? And I, was able to do a little bit better in terms of performance. I did end up, a side effect of saying I wanted to bluff with queen 9 was the conclusion that I didn't want to bluff with queen 7, which turns out to be like not as good. I mean, like queen 7's mixing a little bit, so there's some bet there. But for the most part, I was going to bet with these hands and I was going to not bet with these ones, right? Okay, so then we fold. Would I have used the small bet size in this scenario? That's a good question. Yes, I would have. And the reason I would have used a small bet in this scenario, so I would have had a big bet with a lot of this trips component here, but it would have been too big. So I wouldn't have overbet, for example. And so there are two main ideas driving how I choose my bet sizing in this particular scenario. The two main ideas are that would have allowed me to get to an answer that kind of approximates something sort of like this. And I say that because I would have fucked this up, obviously. Like I'm not going to get the answer right. First of all, I would have known that my opponent could have trips a lot. That's why I want to block it when I'm betting with queen 9, right? I want to bet queen 9, I want to bet jack 9, I want to bet 10, right? Why do I want to do that? Because I want to block trips. So clearly I'm concerned about my opponent's trips waiting, okay? When I think my opponent has a lot of very strong hands, I don't bet huge, okay? So that means that we're going to be using, me personally, I'm going to be using like half pot a lot. I'm going to be using like 75% a lot. That's kind of my zone for bet sizing big, right? So if I had trips, that's the area that I'm going to end up hanging out in. Now, What about bet small? Well, look at this board. So do you have value bets that need protection on ace, ace, three deuce? Yes. In my opinion, you do. I would have wanted to bet hands like pocket fives. I would have wanted to bet hands like pocket fours. I would have wanted to bet some hands like king three suited. I wouldn't have wanted to bet hands like pocket kings. Okay. So if you think about the previous scenario we looked at, betting the hands that don't need protection, like if I'm going to bet them, I could just bet big, right? I don't really want to bet pocket kings huge, so I'd probably just check it. But betting a hand like pocket sevens or pocket eights or pocket sixes or fives or fours or something, those to me, pretty efficient to smaller bet sizes. And that, I would have built a range around that. I would have included some boats in it, which ends up not being great, so it fucked it up. It's better to just use trips, no kicker, than to use a boat. But I mean, like, I'm a human. I would have made a mistake. Yeah, so that's the way that I would have come up with the strategy. I'm going to check this one. It's nice to have the 10 of hearts here. But I'm not really going to be using much betting with this hand. So we can go ahead and take a look at how we should bet, but I don't think betting with this makes much sense. It's more of a medium strength hand. Okay. So again, we're in that 75% check zone, right around there, right? So, it can be helpful when you're like as a little trick, right? When you're trying to just play these situations just a little bit better, trying to think like, do I have a medium strength hand? Do I have a really good hand? Do I have a bluff? Because medium strength hands typically check a lot. Okay, so ace 10 to me felt like a kind of like a classic medium strength hand. As a result, I was like, I don't think I really want to bet this. Yeah, so that's it. So like this scenario, and I think a lot of people here want to check range. I don't actually have a huge problem with that. You're not seeing bet being very being ridiculously dense in any one of these combos. So if you look at these types of scenarios where it's like 80-20 checking ish, and you say I just want to check range. What do you think about that? I think that's fine. I don't think that's like some big fucking disaster or anything. I think it's okay. I think betting like 20% is better because it is better. So that's all we're doing it. But I don't think it's bad to just like simplify it if you want to simplify it. I'll tell you when I would think it was bad to simplify it. If pocket kings was betting at a 100% weight, and if ace queen was betting at a 100% weight, and if pocket fives was betting at 100% weight, and then you decided to just check range, I would think that probably sucks. Because the fact that those hands would be betting pure would be a signal to you that checking those hands kind of sucks. And those hands are particularly good, so checking them is probably going to be, like, checking them might actually compromise your EV in a somewhat meaningful way. But when you're seeing, like, everything mixed pretty heavily like this, like, if someone says, okay, I just want to check range here, I'm like, okay, go ahead, I don't care, it's whatever. It's not going to cost you much. You guys are up, what do you want to do? I didn't ask on the flop because I'm just a prick like that. Looks like you guys are more torn. Looks like we're a little bit more torn this time around. Yeah, I mean, which usually means that the hand's going to mix, right? So I do think that mixing is like pretty reasonable. I think that checking is pretty good. Betting is not bad. You can probably go either way. In terms of bet sizing, I do think you want to have larger bets here. I think you also have some smaller bets here. I think you have some mid-sized bets here. I think this is like going to be kind of a noisy situation for bet sizing. Maybe it's just bet big. I wouldn't, if you said pick one, I would say bet big. But I think that there's probably going to be some mixing in terms of bet sizing. I think this hand's going to mix. I think it's going to be like a 60% check and a 65% check, 35% bet, something like that. So it's an 80% check, 77% check, and a 23% bet. So I mean, like, I'm not that far off. I said if you give me one bet size, I'm going to bet big. That looks like pretty good advice at this moment in time. But there's some, there's like a little bit of bet small, some modest bet small. Okay, so like aces here, kings, these are bet big combos. Ace queen's mixing, ace king, betting big pretty often. It's interesting to see ace king betting more than like king jack, for example. Because I think a lot of humans would do that in reverse. They would check more ace king and they'd bet more king jack. We're seeing 9-7 and 9-6 betting close to pure. We're seeing our flop straight mixing, 10-8 mixing. And so like this is the same kind of, if you guys recall earlier in the session, I said if we had two pair, right? I was talking about our two pair. I said if you have two pair that blocks top pair, you should bet it. I said if you have two pair that unblocks top pair, That's the variation that checks more. I don't know if you guys recall me saying that, but that's what I hope that's what I said. So here you see queen 10. Here you see queen 8. They're betting pure, right? Here's queen 5. It's a little noisy, a little bit mixed there. There's 10-8, right? So much more check from 10-8 than like queen 8 or queen 10, right? There's 8-5, right? Much more check from 8-5 than queen 8 or queen 10. Okay? So again, this is more, remember I also said, like, you don't want to memorize too much. Some things you got to memorize. So one of the things I try to remember is usually the two pair combos that block top pair typically end up betting in a lot of scenarios much more aggressively out of position. Okay, I'm talking about out of position strategy than two pair combos that unblock top pair. And that's, I think a lot of people, a lot of people are having just a chaotic strategy there. They don't have a bias. I think that's the way that you want to bias that scenario. So we checked, which is cool. We face an overbet. You guys are up. What do you guys want to do? Okay, looks like Torin, looks like most of you want to call. We've got one notable folder. Okay, so how do I think about this, right? Well, first of all, obviously I can have, this bet's not like, it is an overbet, but it's not like it's some huge overbet. So, we can't fold the majority of our, we can't fold actually the majority of our range, so that'd be incorrect to say. We can't fold all of our range. We can fold the majority of our range. We can fold over half. So it's incorrect to say we can't fold the majority of our range, so I'm going to avoid saying that. But when I'm organizing my second pair combos, okay, I have ace 10, king 10, jack 10, 10, 9. That's like pretty much, right? I'm opening offsuit nines from the cutoff, okay, just so you know, for the bottom of our opening range. This is why, by the way, it's very important to know your preflop range. If you don't know your preflop range, the first thing you should do is go fucking learn it. So, okay, so 10, 9 and jack 10 are better than this, okay? So my worst second pair combos are gonna be ace 10 and king 10. That's my worst second pair combos. So if I want to fold second pair at all versus an overbet, if I want to fold second pair versus an overbet, it's gonna be ace 10 or king 10, right? So that's the first part. I do have suited 10x, right? I opened suited sixes from the cutoff. So that's going to be 10-6 and 10-7 suited. Those are obviously worse than this. Those will presumably pure fold. I do think ace 10 and king 10 are likely to mix. I don't necessarily think they're likely to be pure folds, but I think that they fold heavily. You also have 10x of spades. If you have the 10 of spades, if you have specifically the 10 of spades, I would assume that that's the best variation of 10x, like alongside 10, 9, and jack 10. Why? Because you don't block where the bluffs are coming from, so it's not like you block a flush draw when you have the 10 of spades, but you do block a flush from coming in, right? And you give yourself a clean trips out as well, okay? So having the 10 of spades is usually quite helpful here. So I don't have a particularly valuable 10x variation here. I don't have 10, 9, I don't have jack 10. I don't have the 10 of spades, okay? But I think that king 10 is, like, in my opinion, the worst variation, so I'd pure fold that. I think this hand's probably going to call maybe a little bit more than it's going to fold. I do think this player could potentially use an overbet with, I don't know about that on this turn card. I don't know if this player can overbet ace 10 themselves. Probably can though. And yeah, I expect this to be kind of noisy between these two options, like 50-50 type strat, something like that. And again, I'd pure fold king 10, so. Okay, so we had our moment of truth. I said I'd 50-50 this off. I basically nailed the answer with ace 10, so I'm happy with that. And we can go take a look at king 10. So I was wrong about king 10. I didn't give king 10 enough credit. So if I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to play this much king 10, I would kind of say that I got the answer almost wrong, because I would fold much more king 10 than this. Ace 10, 10 of spades doesn't have this type of bias towards playing as I would have had in my strategy. It looks like king 10, 10 of spades is certainly much better than king 10, no spade. So you can just look at full percentages here. King 10, 10 of spades is folding about 30%. King 10, no spade here is folding about 50 to 60%. But with ace 10, it works the other way. So it's a little bit noisy, which is annoying. I said specifically jack 10 and 10, 9 are going to be better combos than ace 10 and king 10. That was correct. Okay, so jack 10 and 10, 9 are better combos. And pocket nines is a better combo as well. So drawing, just having that equity to draw to outs is good. we can go ahead. We can go back and take a look at what was overbetting into us here. There is no ace 10 in this overbet unless it has. No, there's no ace 10 in this overbet. So this overbet here is queen 10. Oh wow, this is quite a bit stronger than I thought it was gonna be. It doesn't even have king queen in it. Ace queen, queen 10, 10 8, jack 9. This is a fucking strong overbet. This is a stronger range than I thought it was gonna be. Let's just gonna change this. Yeah, I'm gonna change this to like this really quickly. Yeah, it's still stronger than I would have thought. Still stronger than I would have thought. You can see here like versus check check. You can't overbet like, I don't know, queen 9 is really not overbetting much at all. Although this is like a pretty big. No, yeah, we're good. Just doesn't say it because it's not being chosen here. That's cool. It's a nice simplification that they've got there. Yeah, you can see here like queen 10 is where kind of like the threshold is, it looks like, for using 125. All right. And our regular seminar starts right now. So we're gonna wrap this up here. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you guys. Some interesting spots. I had a lot of fun going through it. Hopefully some of the heuristics I use, like tips, tricks I use for trying to get to the right answer, end up being beneficial for some of you guys. BBZ Poker doing a really good job with Scoop. If you guys have any interest in the mixed games, I don't know if you've seen it, but I think that the guy that built the mixed game for us, I think he's won like 4 or something, or 5 scoops or something like that. He's won so many fucking scoops, it's insane. He basically just keeps winning scoops. And he's won at least 2 or 3, and I think it might be 4 or 5 or something. Like, he's definitely final table 4 or 5. So if you have any interest in learning mixed games, we hired someone who's extraordinarily good at mixed games. So the mixed game bundles is fucking phenomenal. But yeah, for the rest of you guys, I'd encourage you to check out the daily seminars. They're obviously very affordable at $60 a month. The next move will be an increase in price. I'll tell you guys that right now. So for those of you guys that are considering potentially locking in for a year, I'm not saying that we're going to increase the price of seminars like tomorrow or anything like that, but there will not be any further drops in the price of seminars. I know that they started out quite expensive and they've gotten much cheaper, but there will not be any further price reductions in seminars. So seminars from at this point going forward will only get more expensive if the price has changed at all. For those of you considering locking in for a year, I would say that it's a good time to do that. So anyways, thank you guys. I appreciate you, and good luck today and with the rest of Scoop. Bye, guys.